Hello, hello, hello. Welcome in, everybody, to the first edition of our Ballsville Guillotine podcast. That's right, guys. You heard it here. Paulsville Guillotine podcast is here, guys. We are going to do this every week, break down our guillotine leagues, talk about how guillotine leagues work, and just have some fun. We're doing it on Sunday night tonight. We just got done watching the games. I'm here with my good buddy Tortoise, aka Trevor. How you doing, my friend?
Doing pretty good, man. Not so better than the Cowboys, that's for sure.
Yeah, was it a great day for you? Was it not only on the field but also in the fantasy realms, right?
Not doing too bad. Probably did about 50-50. I survived the guillotine this week, though, but that's a little foreshadowing for next week.
Right, there you go. Awesome. All right, so you guys know what we're doing here is we're going to talk about our guillotine leagues, and we're going to go ahead and start this episode, since it is our inaugural episode, with a little breakdown on what a guillotine league is. So basic concept of what guillotine leagues are, if you haven't already played in one, is they are an elimination tournament that is usually 18 teams. And you basically play every week the lowest scoring team, no matter who you're playing against. The lowest scoring team of all 18 gets eliminated from the league. All the players from their team go back on the waiver wire. And every week there is a new set of players, including whoever their first round pick was, available for the rest of the teams to bid on. It's fab bidding. So everybody starts in our leagues with $200 and you don't reset that. So you get $200 for the whole year. So it really does create a fun, kind of unique style of play. It's really like playoff every week kind of an aspect. So, Trevor, you're the one that introduced me to these guillotine leagues initially. So, what was it that drew you to it? I know for me, it was that just elimination aspect and having the opportunity to pick up a guy, like an Amon-Ra or Jonathan Taylor on the waiver wire.
Yeah, we've both been playing fantasy for so long now, and it just seemed like an interesting concept. And I know over the years we've added like different style leagues. We started doing dynasty auction leagues, and this kind of just seemed like the logical next step. I've seen it on, I don't know if it was on a podcast or a website or something. It just seemed like get more people involved and, something new to try out. And I kind of got hooked on it immediately.
Yeah, I totally understand. I'm in the same boat. When we started this league, me and Trevor, and he commissioned the first league that I was in for a guillotine league, and it was one of those things that I didn't really know what to expect going in, and it was just like it took over my kind of fantasy world last season. I was just going nuts watching it weekly. You're always involved, no matter whether you're safe and it or what, because you're always wanting to see who's going to be eliminated, what players are you going to have available. When you start looking at waiver wire bidding and things like that, you really got to be, strategic. And there's different options, different ways you can approach it. But, you've got to have some sort of strategy. You can't willy-nilly it, or you're going to end up, basically broke and not be able to get any of these great players that come available. So it's definitely fun. It's definitely exciting. It creates a whole different aspect, and drafting an 18-team league makes the draft a totally different animal itself as well. So a lot of fun, guys. Get in one if you can. Join one of the Ballsville. We're going to have a lot more of these moving forward, and it's also a part of our new triathlon league. It is going to be something that I think will really take off. So anything you want to add, Trevor, before we move into our first league?
Nope. Let's just kick it off.
Awesome. All right, guys. So we're going to bring up our first league here. So this is our Legend of Sleepy Hollow League, which you'll find that all of our league names, we try to theme off of anything that involves something headless. So if you guys got anything that you want to suggest, we'd love to get it, because it's not easy to find something that's, themed headless that's not completely ridiculous. So help us out if you can. In this league here, we had a low score in this league was 52.76. And unfortunately, it was one of our players, Jimmy Wojo. Sorry, Jimmy. I know it was rough to get kicked out week one. Nobody wants to be the first team out, man. It's horrible. You feel like you didn't even get your just deserves, especially when you see that you had $200 in fab still sitting there to spend. So we feel your pain, man. There's always one, right? This one just had to be you. So we can go through real quick. Let's look at his starting lineup here. We had Joe Burrow was his starting quarterback. He had Jonathan Taylor and Antonio Gibson in as his running backs. Chris Godwin, Amari Cooper were his receivers. Cole Kmet was his tight end, and Brandon Ayuk was his flex. As you can see, there was a lot of underperforming with the exception of Godwin. I don't think anybody else reached their projections. So he definitely had a week that, it happens to all of us where your entire team decides to take a week off and they didn't give you the memo. So what do you think here, Trevor? I don't think his lineup's terrible. Do you think his lineup deserved to be knocked out, or was it just a victim of circumstance?
There's even his bench, it's not even like he could have really swapped a guy in. I guess he could have started Gabe Davis, but could you really start Gabe Davis over an Ayuk, Cooper, Godwin? I doubt it. I mean, the running back 2 is kind of not so great here. And I guess we just kind of have to realize that Joe Burrow always starts off slow. So he's probably not the best quarterback for guillotine. I mean, that's kind of, we'll talk about it in the other couple leagues, but it seems like a common occurrence.
Yeah, and you'll notice here as we go through these 3 leagues, and it'll be something that'll probably be a regular occurrence on a weekly basis, is that there'll be a lot of the same players on a couple of these teams that are getting eliminated because obviously they underperformed. They underperformed on everybody who had them in each of the 3 leagues. So, if you had a combination of a lot of the same guys, then, that's usually how it ends up being that way.
How about Chris Godwin, though? I mean,
right?
This is kind of what he did a couple years ago, just peppered with targets and kind of took over the offense. And Mike Evans kind of took the back seat and only doing like deep ball things, and kind of seems like he's just jumping right back into what he used to do. And then now he's getting touchdowns as well. I think did he have a touchdown this week as well?
I believe
he had a long touchdown. So yeah, now he's got a touchdown every week. I mean, a minimum of 8 catches. I mean, that might be one of the best pickups of the year.
Yeah, he could be a steal, man, especially with the way Baker's playing. I've been eating a lot of crow here over the first couple weeks, but that's another one I got to eat a little crow on because Baker's definitely playing better than I anticipated. So, with that being the case, and Godwin being in this new slot role, I think that he could easily jump his way into that, low end wide receiver 1, high end wide receiver 2 for the rest of the season.
Yeah, I think the Ayuk draft pick as well. I mean, with the whole contract negotiations, and I know he signed it. I think we drafted before he actually signed, though. So it is a little sketchy going after players like that, along with he took Jonathan Brooks and Nick Chubb, who weren't going to be ready to start the season, and we knew that ahead of time. So maybe I would have tried to spend those picks somewhere else, and then maybe you could have had a better RB2, or maybe you decided not to play Ayuk with no practice under his belt.
It definitely. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, no. I mean, it could pay off in the long run. I mean, obviously, you would have to survive week 1 to get those guys to move down like later in the weeks, but I think it's just very risky, especially in a guillotine league where 1 week could be the death of you. It needs to be something more reliable. You're not swinging for the fence. You're just trying to put up maybe 10 points per player. It's just a very risky strategy that obviously didn't pay off here.
Yeah, and that's that's a good point to bring up. All you guillotine newbies out there, don't draft players that are going to be for sure out. Like you see here, he took Nick Chubb and Jonathan Brooks. Now, if you want to take one of those players because the draft value is there based on the draft board and the way things are falling, go ahead and do that. But just prepare for it by drafting another running back so that you have that coverage. So, an example being, you can see his bench here. His backup running backs both are Jonathan Brooks, Nick Chubb, and he has no other running back on his roster beyond those 2 players. So, I'm sorry, he has Will Shipley, but I believe he did not draft Will Shipley. I believe that was once he got one of these 2 guys on his IR, he picked him up.
Correct.
Yeah,
and it looks like he took Antonio Gibson at the 909. So I'm wondering where he took Brooks at. Let me see. He took Brooks at 6'11". So imagine a running back you could have taken at the 6th round instead of, and then waiting to get Antonio Gibson as your RB2. Like that could have made all the difference in the world.
Well, and he took a big gap between Brooks. So if you're going to take Brooks at the 6'11", I think you need to be ready to take another running back in the 7th round, no matter what, because you got to prepare for week 1. Then you got to have the lineup. You can always get a receiver. I mean, look at Rashid Shaheed, right? Rashid Shaheed would have been a player that could have been available late in a draft. That would have been a perfect flex play for somebody who took a running back in his first 7 rounds in these leagues. So, that's just something to think about when you're doing these drafts, guys. It's going to be something that will, come back to bite you if you don't do your draft. Your draft has to fall really well, and you have to draft perfectly to cover a guy who's out for 4 weeks to start the season in a guillotine league, especially with a very short roster that we have in the large 18 team drafts.
Well, let's check out like the opposite side of the spectrum here on the highest scoring points of the week in Maui James here. And you can just see his roster build is just completely different, where I believe he took Josh Allen in the 1st round. But I mean, look how that paid off. 35 points. That's almost more than half of what Jimmy Wojo scored.
Exactly. And he got it on the one player.
Yeah.
So, and that's – go ahead.
Right? Yeah. Well, I mean, his other players are kind of safe picks in David Montgomery. We didn't really know a whole lot about Pollard, but we knew worst case scenario was going to be 50-50. I wasn't a big fan of Diggs, but 2 touchdowns week 1. And then, Debo's always a strong pick to get a lot of touches. He took an early tight end, which, tight ends haven't really paid off this season, but that's usually a strategy I like to take in an 18-man league, is having like a really good tight end that, will put you ahead of the rest of the pack, with there being only, 5-6 good tight ends. Well, that's what we thought before going into the season.
Yeah, right. I mean, right now we're looking at like 2 good tight ends. At least I think Trey McBride showed off pretty good, and Kyle Pitts, we're waiting on his week 2 performance, but I don't think any of the other tight ends really had a great day. Maybe Kittle was decent today, but I don't think there was a whole lot.
And then he got hurt as well. So
yeah, so I think it was just cramps, though, if I remember correctly. But yeah, so that's a good point to make there for sure. So based on what happened with Jimmy Wojo, so we know that Jimmy Wojo's lineup was now on the waiver wire going into that week. So everybody had $200 to start with, because this is week 1, everybody. So this was going to be one of those weeks where you're going to get a lot of high bids for these top guys. And, it was going to be that type of case no matter what the situation was going to be. It just seems to be a little higher week 1 a lot of times. So for the top player from his roster that was bid for the highest amount was Jonathan Taylor, and he went for $127. So, you're looking at about 2/3, I'd say, of just under 2/3 of your total spend amount.
Yeah, that's 60%.
Yeah, right about there. That's about right, 60%. So if you look at the bids, though, the next closest bid was 120. So you're not, even had I not bid my 127 and got him at that, he was going to go for 120. So there was 4 people that bid over $100 for him, including Trevor and myself. So
that's so crazy that you spent that much money. That just blew my mind. I was like, I mean, we've only done this for 1 year, so we really have no idea what we're talking about as for fab bidding, especially on a week 1 bid. But it cracked me up when I see that you bid $127, especially after all the conversations we've had in the past about this. But I mean, I did the same thing. I went over 100 just because I thought Taylor is a foundational piece to anyone's roster who, has a nice floor to him and still can put up, high ceiling weeks, top 5 maybe.
Exactly. And, and the way that I looked at it too, and the reason that, so everybody has a little context here, the reason that Trevor's saying that he's shocked about that for me is I went into last season very conservative with my fab bidding early in the season, all the way through up until probably around like week 6 or so, when I really started to like bid a little higher and starting to grab some higher players. Cause by that point in time, I was one of the few teams with a good amount of fab left. So, which is a strategy that you can take, and it does work well. The one thing that I do remember dealing with was the stress of having to make sure that I was able to at least make it through to the next week every week, where I didn't have a roster that I knew I could set and be ready to roll, not have to worry about, do I start this guy or that guy, and be able to just kind of sift my way through the first few weeks without any stress. So this year I made it a point to go ahead and throw a good amount on the best player that I wanted, the number one player I wanted in the first week, because I wanted to fill that one spot that I just knew on each roster that starts. Your flex guy is as a hit or miss guy. Everybody's that way, because by that point in time, your draft, there's not anybody on the board that's available. That's a worthy start, right?
Yeah.
So, we all need to replace a flex guy to start the season in order to really become a solid team across the board. And that's what I tried to do. So, I ended up bidding the perfect amount, only being $7 above the next guy to get the guy I wanted. So, I think for the strategy I'm trying to go at with it this time around, it worked out well for me based on the amount that I ended up bidding and where I got him at.
Yep.
So, we'll see if it plays out. Again, like you said, we're not like super experts at this or anything. I'd like to think I know a little bit more just from like being involved in it from last season. But, hey, there's guys out there that have been doing it for 3 seasons now or so is how long this has been around. So,
yeah.
This is going to be one of those things that as time goes on, there's going to be like a cream rising to the top kind of scenario where we'll find out what strategies are going to be the best. But right now, I think it's just so new, it's hard to tell. So, all right. So that's the first team or the first league, guys. Anything you want to talk about with that league, Trevor? Anything that kind of seemed a little different from the other leagues or stood out to you at all?
Well, if you go back to the rest of the players that were claimed, I ended up winning Godwin and Ayuk, and I didn't purposely try to get 2 players and blow how much total. Wow, yeah, like $130, no, $110.
Yeah, this was that's a good point. I'm glad you said something because I totally glossed over that, and I wanted to make sure we talked about that in this league. This is a prime example of where you have no idea what to expect from what people are going to do, right? Like,
yeah,
Trevor saw Chris Godwin's game, heard all the hype coming out across Chris Godwin, liked what he saw, and thought that the guy was going to be sought after by multiple teams. Yeah. So he did what he thought was going to be necessary, right? And is this one of those scenarios? Tell me if you did this, because I've done it a million times too, and it's hilarious. Did you go in there and start out with like 55, and then like a few hours later, maybe the next morning, you thought about it a little more, and then you bumped it up to like 63? And then,
well, I'm sure I do it the same way as you, where I'm putting multiple bids on multiple people and just hoping I at least get somebody to slide into my flex position. And I had Hopkins in my flex week 1, and he gave me 1 catch for 8 yards. So I was kind of feeling a little desperate, and I thought that there would be more hype around Godwin. And so that's why I paid, I guess, $43 more than anyone else. And I kind of just put in like a low dollar bid for Ayuk, thinking, I'm not going to get him, but if I do get him for $42, I'll be happy with that. But now my lineup's kind of set. I feel like what I have is, 2 good wide receiver 2s that are going to give me, 10 to 15 points a week. And, hopefully I can just slide on by for a good month or 2 and try to get into the later rounds where people start having less and less budget to spend on the rest of the guys.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely going to be because you ended up getting 2 guys that you bid a decent amount on. So you actually spent the most out of all the teams in this week based on the fact that you got both those 2 players. Just so everybody can understand.
Not more than you. I got more budget than you still.
No, you don't. You spent more than I did, didn't you?
No.
Oh, no, you're right. You only spent, okay. Yep, you're under, you got about $10 more than me. $9, somewhere in that range.
And I think Godwin's been outscoring JT, so it's working out pretty nice.
Yeah, so just so everybody understands the context of this conversation here, Trevor bid $76 on Chris Godwin. The next closest bid was $33. So Trevor outbid the other guy by more than he actually bid. So just so you guys know.
What was the rest of the bids on Ayuk?
Yeah, the fact that he went for almost half of what Ayuk went for is crazy. Or Ayuk
that's what I thought. I was like, I don't, but look, I beat him by $1.
Got him by $1, ladies and gentlemen.
And I know
$1. He got him
it's
by the
kind of
Price is Right rules.
it's kind of
I
hard,
love it.
especially like doing a podcast and you giving out like our, I guess, strategies or our bidding process on players like that. But usually when I'm bidding on a player, most people that are not familiar with like a fab budget system, you kind of want to stay away from those even numbers, like those 5 and 0 increment things, because that's going to be a very common thing is someone's going to bid $40 and maybe you think, oh, well, I'm going to do 41 in hopes that, someone has a 40 out there. And then you start second guessing yourself again. Well, the next guy might do the same thing, 41. Well, I'm going to go 42. I'll spend the extra $2 and, maybe something like that happens and you get super lucky where you win by $1. But I really think, I mean,
Yep.
Ayuk did have a bad week 1, but he probably should have went for a lot more money than $42.
Yeah, no, 100%. I think especially being that it's week 1 was affected solely by the fact that he didn't not go to training camp at all.
Yeah.
So, there should have been more of an understanding that he's going to be picking it up as time goes on. But again, week to week, right? So,
Yeah.
I'm sure that had some factor there too. The one thing I do want you mentioned, which is a good thing, and I want to make sure I mention that to everybody, is if you notice something familiar about all these numbers right here on the bids, there's not a single one that ends in 0. So if you want to win a player, do not bid with 10, 20, 30, 40. You're not going to get them. So just do something a little different, add a little flavor to your bid, and don't go with the multiples of 10. So the next, so just so that everybody can kind of tell that we the prices that players went for beyond the 3 that we've already discussed. Amari Cooper went for $27. There was a total of 5 bids on him. The next closest bid was $32, but because Trevor decided to go ahead and get 2 players by that point, he wasn't able to get this player. And so my guess is here, and Trevor, you can tell me if I'm wrong, and this is something I want to make sure to mention also, is did you use the same player to drop in order to make sure you didn't get both of those players?
Correct. So I believe I had Troy Franklin on Jonathan Taylor as well. But since, you outbid me on Taylor, he kind of fell down to the next guy. And then from there, you have to make a decision whether you're going to continue to drop the same player and only grab one dude, or, best case scenario, maybe you end up getting 2, you're going to have to drop a second player. So you might have 2 bids with the same number with 2 different guys that you're dropping. If that is something you're looking to do, is add 2 players.
Exactly. Yeah. So basically what Trevor's saying, guys, is that what he did here as an example of what he's talking about is he had a bid in on Amari Cooper, and he also had a bid in, I'm going to use Brandon Ayuk as the example. So he wanted to make sure that he wanted to see, okay, I want to get Chris Godwin and I want to get Brandon Ayuk. I'm okay spending both of those guys, that money for both those guys. So he put 2 different players to drop on those 2 guys. So if it comes down to it, he has the opportunity to pick them both up. But then he said to himself, I don't want to pick up those 2 players and Amari Cooper, but I do want to put a bid in on him in case I don't get one of those 2 players. So he decided to use probably Josh Downs as the drop tool in order to make it happen, where if he got Chris Godwin, he would only get one of Brandon Ayuk or Amari Cooper, because if he gets Brandon Ayuk, Josh Downs is no longer on his roster. He cannot get Amari Cooper no matter whether he bid higher or not. So that's how you use the player you're dropping to make sure you don't double up on a position that you don't want 2 players of. Does that make sense? I hope it does, because I don't want to break it down again.
Yeah, and also the way that it orders it, it's not like a normal, like a waiver wire process. Your priority will be based on how much money you're spending. So it's always going to factory set to the highest player you're bidding is at the top of your list, and then it's going to go down based on your bidding.
Yep. So
even if you have a higher priority on another player, like you'd rather have a player for cheaper, it just doesn't work that way.
Yep. And because he had a bid on both Brandon Ayuk and Amari Cooper with Josh Downs as his drop man, and he had 32 for Cooper and 42 for Ayuk, Ayuk was the one that he won. And then Amari Cooper went to the next highest bid of 27. The next
and that's why it's always good to put like a low bid. I mean, even if you're not really interested in Cooper, it might be advantageous of you to put like a $10 bid on him, just in case something like this happens to another guy where he has multiple bids, he gets out or he wins the first guy, and now he doesn't have a second guy to drop, and now you're getting a free pickup for $10. So I don't know if I did bid on the rest of these guys, but that's usually typically something I'll do is I'll just put multiple bids in, like really low, like something that I think would never happen. But, if it does, somebody fucks up their waiver claim, and then I get a guy for super cheap.
Yep. I believe it happened with I want to say T. Higgins last season that you had that exact same situation play out and you got him for like $17 or something.
And I didn't even realize that Alex got Joe Burrow here because I did make a trade this week because Tua was my starting quarterback. And so we all know what happened with Tua last week. And so I was in a little bit of a panic, and Alex reached out in the chat saying he needed a running back. So I figured I could give up one of my running backs and try to trade for Joe Burrow. I ended up giving him Rachaad White. I know he got banged up this week, but I believe he came back into the game.
Yeah, he did.
And I feel like I might have overpaid a little after the trade had been accepted. I kind of second guessed myself a little bit. I was maybe I should have asked for a little bit of fab or something. But at that point, I was just kind of desperate for quarterback. So I decided that sacrifice is something I was willing to make.
Surprise, surprise. Alex taking advantage of somebody who's desperate with a trade. So he ended up getting Joe Burrow for $21, which he then turned around and traded to Trevor for a player that would have went for a lot more than $21. Yeah. So just to give you guys an idea, even if you don't need the position, you go pick him up, put the bid in. You never know, man. Like Burrow was not something he needed on that roster at all, but he put the bid in. He ended up winning him, and then it turned around and got him a position of need. So that's something that you guys want to think about. The next player that went, there wasn't anybody else too crazy. I would say Jonathan Brooks getting picked up for $11. I feel like that's definitely something that he regrets now, looking at the fact that he dropped Wan'Dale Robinson to pick up Jonathan Brooks in a guillotine league. I would probably have hung on to Wan'Dale for, maybe dropped somebody else and kept Wan'Dale. But that's just how the cookie crumbles, I guess, right?
I mean, for $11, it's not that big of a deal, but yeah, Wan'Dale might be nice, but I don't really know.
$11, it's losing Wan'Dale from the roster.
Yeah,
I think there was probably something better he could have kept off. He could have dropped and that he would have been happier to get rid of.
Yeah, I don't. But I'm looking at C-Bomb's lineup, and he has Garrett Wilson, Flowers, Keenan Allen. So I don't know that Wan'Dale's even making his lineup. He also has Adonai Mitchell. So yeah, maybe that was just something he decided that, I'm not going to start this guy anyway. It's something I'd rather do and have that third running back because he has Gus Edwards here, Blake Corum. I mean, Charbonnet looks great now, depending on how long Kenneth Walker's out.
Yeah.
So he has a really a nice lineup going here, especially with the floor of Lamar Jackson.
He does. Yeah, he's got a nice.
Probably not going to have to spend any money for a while now.
Yeah, Brian Robinson looks like he's doing good. I mean, he needs that second running back, so he's going to have to figure out where he's going to fix that with Charbonnet for now. But Charbonnet potentially, it's not expected to be a long injury from what I understand. So he's going to be relegated to backup duty again soon.
Yep.
So he'll have to work on that. But as long as he makes it through next week, then he's going to be able to get a good running back off the waiver wire. So, from what I understand, I know that we're looking at week 1 right now, but we're already at the end of Sunday for week 2. And I believe he is totally safe going into week 2 on this league. So he's going to have the opportunity to pick somebody up. All right. So that was a fun little talk there about that league, huh? Let's move on to the other league over here. We're looking at this league here. We're going to look at is 18 heads in a duffel bag. This is another one of our $25 leagues. We have two $25 leagues, one $50 league for these guillotine leagues, guys. And
you do. You have a $50 league.
Yeah. We'll get to that one soon, guys. Trevor's giving you guys a little premonition here on what's coming. But so in this league here, so our good buddy Gallows 18 was the team to get eliminated this week. And not only did he get eliminated this week, but ready for it, ladies and gentlemen, He is the inaugural Turd Team of the Week. That's right. We are going to have a Turd Team of the Week. Every week, the lowest scoring team is going to be highlighted. Whoever lost out of the 3 teams with the lowest score will just be highlighted on here about how amazingly horrible their team did for that week. So let's go ahead and check it out, guys, shall we? His total score, 48.92, everybody. 48.92. That doesn't even require a courtesy flush. It's so small. That's just terrible. So let's see his players. Let's see how he got to this horrible total here. Jalen Hurts got him 20.42 points. That is, I think, the highest scoring player on his team and almost half of his points. So that tells you how bad the rest of his team did. And that's still less than his projection, by the way, everybody. So it wasn't like he had a great day. He did a little less than he was supposed to. And then you go down to Raheem Mostert. Poor old man got hurt. 3.9, not great. Gus Edwards, another poor old man, didn't get hurt, but he's just a poor old man, so he only got 3.8. Amon-Ra St. Brown, this was the one that really got him. This was his first-round pick right here, his stud player who should be the one that brings him back when the situation happens like Mostert and Edwards, but no, he showed up with a nice whopping 4.3. Christian Kirk got him 4 points. Yay for Christian. Mark Andrews, another one that was an early draft pick that should have gotten him good points, 3.4. And Keon Coleman, as a rookie, came in and got the second most points on the entire squad at 9.10.
The one player you should have been the most worried about, and he scores better than
everybody but your quarterback.
I mean, this is a great lineup, though. Like, for guillotine purposes, like, this lineup looks phenomenal. Like, you couldn't ask for safer players than Amon-Ra, Christian Kirk, and Mark Andrews. I mean, you could probably throw Mostert into that pot as well.
Yeah,
I mean, I know he got hurt.
Yeah,
right. I mean, this was the Isaiah Likely week, so the Mark Andrews thing's a little scary. But
you know what else? I think I'm going to go all the way to the bottom here. Okay, no, I thought he might have been the team that also had him on the bench, but he did not have Isaiah Likely on the bench for the double whammy. So I guess he just has to take the Turd Team of the Week as his only loss.
Yeah, it's just brutal, man. Like, I love this lineup so much. I mean, this one on the left is pretty fabulous as well. But, yeah, it's just, bad luck.
There's a reason, everybody. There's a reason.
It's just bad luck. I mean, we'll talk about the other league after this, but it just, it happens. I mean, we all lose leagues week 1, and we don't see it coming after all the investment and time and research we all do. And then shit like this happens week 1, and got to try to stay positive.
Yeah, right. Except for in a guillotine league, because if you're only in one, then you're done, and you don't have to stay positive because you can just move on.
Yeah, well, it's just one more roster you don't have to set now.
Right. You can pull a bonus and say, I'm on to 2025.
Yeah.
So so let's go move on to the players that got picked up. Right. So you guys saw that roster, which, like he said, it wasn't a horrible roster at all. So we had some decent bids on there, good amount of them. Again, Amon-Ra, 127. I wonder who did the great job of bidding on that one.
Yeah.
Oh, that was me again. Save him out as got Jonathan Taylor for. I feel like it was just as good of a deal. You can see I only bid $4 more than the next closest guy, so I wasn't going to get him if I went any lower. Trevor's right up there with the 107 again, so just so you guys know, I got him on both these leagues.
Yeah. And how's that working out for you with Amon-Ra?
Hey, it worked out okay. It didn't start out okay, but it worked out by the end. So next player that went was $111 for Jalen Hurts. So let's talk about the difference between $21 for Joe Burrow in the last league and $111 for Jalen Hurts in this league. That to me is like, I know that there's a difference between them, but that is really drastic right there. That's $90 basically.
Yeah. That goes a long way later on in the season. But look where the rest of the bids were. I mean, he nailed it. They both had 111, and then this is where it comes down to the waiver priority. And I guess it's based off of your draft position, but this is one of those scenarios where if you would have just bid $1 more, then you could have had the guy,
Yeah, instead of being lazy and just hitting the same number 3 times, just move your finger over one spot to the 2, and you're golden.
Well, it looks like they both had the same idea. They're like, well, I'm not going to do 110. I'm going to do 111. And then,
And again, if you notice, there's not a single bid with a $0 increment on the end. So everybody thought the same thing, and they just had to make sure that they bid enough. Those two guys, unfortunately, had the same idea and thought too much alike. So unfortunately for Cross, fortunately for TB, because
I'm surprised there's not more bids though. With 18 or 17 teams bidding on these guys, and the rest of the league just doesn't even put a bid in at all. I mean, I guess if you have a good quarterback, but I'd still be putting a bid in. I mean, I guess I didn't bid either, so
I think week one. I think this was a week one thing too. I think a lot of teams were afraid to bid a lot on week one, and they really wanted.
You know what? Because I have Lamar. Maybe I just said no, it's not worth my time to put in a low bid. But for any of those like mid-tier quarterbacks, I would be putting something in there, like $20, and you never know what happens with the bidding system.
Yeah, see, and I had A-Rich, and I wasn't looking to bid on him either. So yeah, I understand what you're saying. Though
spend their money, but the
sometimes
Christian Kirk thing.
You don't have big enough depth on your roster or your bench to really carry like 3 quarterbacks, you know?
Yeah. But so the $73 for Christian Kirk, especially how he came out week one, like that's very surprising.
That's another one. Like Rage basically pulled a Trevor here and outbid you by a good amount there with the next player's bid. He had 73 versus your 46. So
he went and got his guy. I mean,
he wanted him and he got him.
Yeah.
Then the next one below that, we had Mark Andrews going for $37, which I was surprised that was lower than I anticipated. And we had another same exact scenario. We had both guys bidding the same amount and one guy winning amount with the waiver priority.
But see, they both did $2 extra, and it just goes to waiver priority at that point. But I think this is just has to do with being scared of his week one performance, you know, with the Isaiah Likely thing, getting, 12 targets or something crazy.
Yeah, Likely definitely. But I mean, I felt like that wasn't going to be a consistent thing all season. I think people overreacted to week one, but
we saw this week. I think Likely had 2 catches this week. So
he had a good amount of targets, I think, too, but so did Andrews.
Yeah.
So
I think that's a steal. And
then you got Keon Coleman for 36 going to you.
Yeah.
That was, you outbid me on that one. You got me on that one by, what does that look like there? $9. So you got that one good amount there. That's not too bad, $9.
And this was my range of like those mid-tier flex positions that, you know, I try to get at least 1 or 2 of these guys for the first couple of weeks just to replace that flex player and try to bump up your points, 5 to 10 more points a week. Yep. Coleman obviously put up a fucking goose egg this week, so it's not great, but he still is getting the targets, and he seems to be one of the go-to guys on the outside, I believe, right? They still doing Shakir in the middle.
Yeah, Shakir, he's mostly a slot guy, and then they have Keon on one side and Samuel on the other, so he's going to get his targets. I just don't think it's going to be early in the season. I think you just might want to keep him on the bench for another few weeks. Usually week 6 to 7 is when they really start to work their rookies in a lot more. So
give him a little time. The Bills just want to run the ball too. So
yeah,
I think it's game script dependent. It's kind of like Baltimore where when they're stomping people, they're not going to be throwing it at all. So if they have a huge lead, they're just going to run the ball.
When you're up 31-10, I mean, what are you going to do?
Yeah. But after Coleman, I mean, with the Mostert injury, I probably wouldn't be really interested in him unless I really need a running back because, he did miss this week as well. So
you put in $11 and then $28 for C-Bomb.
Yeah, it's just for emergency. Like I'll get him. If I get him for $11, I'm happy. If I lose out on him, then who cares?
Yeah, and then Demarcus Robinson going for $14 was really because of the Puka injury. That was people really going after him, and like you had him on there, but you had gotten somebody else, so you did the same thing. On Coleman, I'm assuming.
Yeah, just the priority on him. I am curious if you click on Hayden Hurst, how many targets is this guy getting? Because it seems like every time I'm watching the Chargers, he just keeps getting targets, but I guess not, right? 3
he
and
only
2.
Got 3 and 2. Yep.
Maybe he's just out there running a lot of routes. I got to look into that more, but he seems like a big part of the offense.
Yeah. Yep. All right. That is league number 2. So we're going to go ahead and jump over to the final league of the night. There's a reason that we saved this league for last, ladies and gentlemen, and you're about to find out why.
Well, because it's the most expensive league, right? That's why?
Oh, yeah, it's the most expensive league. And, it just, there's something really, really good, just unique happened in this league. The guy who created this guillotine format for me and brought this to my attention, good friend of mine, love him to death. He just had a really rough week. He ended up scoring a good 56.36, everybody, which isn't the third team of the week. Thank God he made it. He made it past that. It's like hitting your drive just past the ladies' tees. You're not happy about it, but you're definitely happier than it would have been if it was behind those ladies' tees. So, that's kind of where he feels his mindset is right now. And let's see whose team this is. Drum roll, ladies and gentlemen. It's Trevor. Dun, 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 dun.
Man, this was such a heartbreaker for me too, because I had McCaffrey. If you scroll down to my bench, I had the 101 and I took McCaffrey, and we all thought he was gonna be healthy, 95% health, going into week 1 and all the bullshit the fucking Niners gave us. And luckily I got Jordan Mason later on in the draft, and I was prepared for that. And so going into the was it Monday night game?
Yep.
And there was another team. Whose team is it? Truman. He had 60 points already, and his team was done. So I needed like 26 points out of Jordan Mason, and this was the most wild game. Just, being on the brink of elimination, and I'm like, there's no shot that I'm going to be able to pull this off. And Jordan Mason comes out on fire. He gets a touchdown. Like, I think it was like maybe the first drive of the game. Penalty flag by Debo, and then they get it back to the 1 yard line, and then they give it to Debo, and Debo takes my fucking touchdown right off the bat. And oh man, it's just heartbreaking. Just heartbreaking.
Man. So just close. So everybody knows too, he ended up missing it by what, like 4 points?
Yeah,
so
less than 4 points. I think like 3.5 points.
That touchdown that Debo cost him. Not only did Debo cause the flag that cost him the actual touchdown run that was close to like a 19-yard touchdown run, but Jordan Mason then gets the ball to the 1 yard line, and they turn around and give it to Debo on a little sweep, and Debo is the one that gets the 1 yard touchdown run. And so Trevor was fired up, to say the least. It was one of the funniest
screaming
moments.
and yelling at work, and and then I also had Burrow here, and that's a common thing from one of the other teams, but he supposedly a great matchup against New England, and then he just fell on his fucking face.
It was a rough week for a lot of your players, man. I mean, you Michael Pittman should have done better. Deontay Johnson should have done better. Trey McBride should have done better. DeAndre Hopkins should have done better. I mean, you didn't even have. It's not like you could have done anything about it because your bench wasn't helpful.
Yeah, my bench is just all zeros anyway.
So everybody, Trevor was the elimination team of the week in the Brady League. The $50 most expensive.
Yeah, the $50 one. That's the one. That's why it hurts.
Trevor is now out.
But I have a lot of leagues anyway, so it's one less roster I have to set now. So I try to look at the bright side, But it is rough. These are so much fun, especially going into the first couple weeks and bidding on all these superstars. It's just, so much fun to be in the money still, but
yeah,
sometimes it ends up that way.
It's crazy too. I mean, the difference in what 1 week can do, I mean, you have the 1.1 and these leagues, guys, on a 18-man draft like that, we usually do what they call third round reversal. So what that does is, instead of the first pick getting the 1.1 and then getting the 2.18 and the 3.1, they draft the 2.18 and it goes back to the end of the draft and starts at the end of the third round with the 3.1. So you're actually in the one spot. You have 1.1, 2.18, and 3.18. So it definitely makes it a lot more difficult to end up with a solid roster if you have a hard time with your first round pick, like what happened with Christian McCaffrey.
Just brutal. And from the looks of it, this might be the most players that were bid on. So it's not like these guys are just fucking nobodies. It's just a bad fucking week, man.
Yeah, you had a lot of players bid on. You just had the lowest bidding because of the fact that your players
even when you scroll down, like some of the guys at the bottom have multiple bids on them.
Yeah, well,
that wasn't happening in the other leagues. Like,
Yep. Chase Brown, Malik Willis got bid on because of what happened with the Green Bay deal.
Oh yeah, that
Actually,
wasn't one of my players. That was a free agent pickup.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was a free agent pickup. So some of these guys are off of the waiver wire too, guys, because it happens all at the same time after the players are dropped. If there's somebody on the waiver wire who becomes a great pickup because there was an injury, then he'll be included in the waiver bids for that team that was also dropped. So Joe Burrow went for the most in this one. He ended up going for $81. So
yeah, 21 in that last league.
Exactly.
81 here and 21 in the last league.
Mm-hmm. It's crazy the difference that you might see sometimes too. The next closest bid was $19.
So I don't know who his quarterback was, but maybe we have like a Tua situation here.
We can go look and see real quick. Let's go look at his team.
Jordan Love. Yeah, so same thing.
Mm-hmm. So he didn't have a quarterback at all on his bench, so he needed a starting quarterback to start this week. So
that's what it's about. When you're missing that guy, you got to fucking spend the money and not worry about what comes after that because you just got to make it there.
Yeah. I mean, granted, I'm sure he was really upset to see the next closest bid was so much lower.
Yeah.
But, I mean, like you said, there's nothing you can do, man. It's probably like I talked about earlier. It's one of those things where he probably bid like 30 something, freaked himself out thinking about it, jumped it up to 40 something, freaked himself thinking about it, jumped himself up. And then last minute, right before waivers went and he jumped it up again.
Yeah. And probably thought that Burrow is the best on the team with the McCaffrey injury and thinking that I'm probably not bidding enough.
Exactly. And again, he kept running it through his mind. So sometimes, guys, you got to stick to your guns, man. If you know that this player is going to be worth this much, and if you really want to get him, bid a few dollars more than that, but stick to your guns at that point and don't talk yourself into going crazy on it. Maybe $5, $6 more at the most.
But you also got to look at, I mean, the only other quarterback on the board was Malik Willis. So if you don't get Burrow, you're fucked.
Well, then you can bid a certain amount on Malik Willis to make sure you get him because a $20 to $25 bid's going to get Malik.
Well, granted that some of these teams do have multiple quarterbacks. Let me see here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 teams all have two quarterbacks. So maybe that's a different scenario that you could have went with and maybe tried to trade for one of these guys because, if you didn't bid the 81 and Burrow went for like the $20 range, then you can use that information and then go to one of these other teams and say, hey, I'll give you $20 for a Kirk Cousins, an Aaron Rodgers.
Or you can go right to the team that bid $20 on him and offer them a deal. Yeah. Say, hey, I'll throw you this player and $30 for that player you just got $21 for.
Yeah.
Or, and then you're saving on a bunch of FOB that you were going to spend anyway. So what's giving up your bench receiver and $30 really it's still saving you $50. So, I would definitely be that route with it too. If you end up being outbid by somebody, in that scenario. So, he should have probably done a 20 something, 30 something to make sure he got him. Then he would have won him and no problem. But if somebody outbid him, throw him $40 in a player and you're happy. So next guy that got picked up was CMC, obviously. He dropped all the way down to $79 based on what happened with his injury. And this was prior to IR. So this was not when everybody knew he was going to be out for 4 weeks minimum. This was prior to that. Everybody thought that, okay, it was that last minute scratch. He's probably going to be okay for week 2. And they were going to assume that he's okay to go moving forward. So they bid $79 on him. Next closest bid was 66. So it wasn't a huge jump. But it definitely did not play out well as time went on based on what we know now that he's on IR and out for 4 weeks. So that's going to be
they're saying 6 weeks now.
Oh, wow. So, I mean, you're looking at a player that, even at this point, it's one of those scenarios where you might want to try to move him to somebody who doesn't have any concerns on depth and has the room on their roster to carry him on a bench. Because it's tough to hang on to a guy like that if you're not already deep.
I know, but if you can survive, I mean, that might win you the league.
Yeah, but I wouldn't be surprised at all if something doesn't happen. Like let's look at his roster real quick, guys, and this will give us a good gauge on where we think he's going to end up because it's going to take some time to carry him that long, and he needs to win every week. He just lost Tua.
No, he has Tua.
So, and then we don't know what's going on with Pacheco. He limped off the field.
I
Connor
think he left with crutches.
Jefferson, he left like the field on
Yeah,
like
after the game, I think he was walking out with crutches with a boot on.
Pacheco was.
Yeah.
Okay, I heard that it was somebody else was leaving with a boot. Does it say anything in here? Let's read it real quick. Left the stadium in a walking boot on crutches. Yep. Undergo additional tests on his ankle injury Monday. So he's probably looking at a high ankle sprain. I'm assuming based on what I saw.
And for his team build, having Pacheco and Connor, I don't know if maybe you just thought that was a low bid for McCaffrey, because it seems kind of low to me without knowing the injury stuff ahead of time. But
Yeah,
your team looks pretty good.
and he had
just your running backs, and and you have a starting running back in your flex. Like, I don't know if I would have went that way with a running back and maybe just let somebody else deal with the headache, and then most likely McCaffrey's going to end up on the waiver again at some point.
Yeah, because now he's $79 less, and he's got two running backs still that he can play with Devin Singletary and James Conner.
With Jefferson and Flowers.
Do something for Tua. Yeah. So, yeah, he's got a solid squad. So he's not a terrible team, but the depth is the concern I have for him. He doesn't have.
Yeah, especially because he lost Ferguson that week as well. So now you need a tight end for.
Yep.
I'm sure he found one by now since we're already past week 2, but that would have probably been one of my more priorities.
Yeah, I would have saved the 79 and went after that.
Yeah, I probably would have spent it on Trey McBride right there.
Yep. Speaking of which, Trey McBride went for $70. He was outbid by the next closest guy of $41. So he outbid him by $29 total. So that's a pretty decent outbid. But again, his team build might have, had him in a position where he really thought that was the best player for him. And so he also ended up picking up Michael Pittman at $40. So he ended up spending a total of $110 on these two players. The next closest guy was $1 below him at $39. This is the first time I've seen one with a $0 win.
Yeah, it looks like Cash had Njoku, so he went down with an injury. So that explains why he went so heavy after McBride.
Yeah, that does make sense. He also went after Jordan Mason here, which I wonder. Let's see if he bid on Jordan Mason. See, he didn't even bid on Jordan Mason after bidding that $71 to pick up Christian McCaffrey. I don't agree with that. That if I'm going after McCaffrey, I'm going balls to the wall and I'm trying to get the backup too, in case, especially knowing that the injury situation was what it was prior to IR. It was still an up in the air deal. So
yeah, and I like that you just put a random $7 bid in, just in case. You just never know. Like, if all these guys screw the waiver wire up and hit a couple of those guys earlier, then you get a free Jordan Mason for $7 possibly. I mean, it doesn't hurt to, throw a bid in, even if you think you're going to lose it.
Yeah, I believe 23 on Pittman. I actually was put in a decent enough bid on him, but I think I might have done the next guy to go after Jordan Mason at 40 was Deontay Johnson, went for 14. Did another $7 bid on that one, and then that was the next closest up behind C-Bomb's bid that won at a 14.
What are we going to do about Deontay Johnson? Like, what do you think's going on with him? Because I was so high going into him.
I think I'm benching him. Dropping him, but I'm benching him for sure.
I have him everywhere, and he's obviously the number one on the team. They just can't get it together. Like, he has no time in the backfield, and it's just driving me nuts, really.
That was one of the games that I watched today, and I'm telling you, man, they just look lost out there. Bryce Young looks like Sam Darnold looked when he was in the Jets, like seeing ghosts and all that. Like, he just looked lost. He looked scared. He didn't know what he was doing out there. I mean, Malik Willis had a more composed game than Bryce Young. Like, that tells you all you need to know. So I definitely don't think Bryce Young is going to make Deontay Johnson a valuable player. I would have him on my bench, but only because I just can't drop him. I would try to trade him if I could, be honest. Try to sell him while you can.
Just find the believer somewhere.
Yeah, find somebody who still believes. Try to find that Panthers fan in your fantasy league. Next guy to go after Malik Willis at 11 was Chase Brown, who also went for 11. 4 total bids on him. C-Bomb actually bid $12 on him, but he already had he protected himself from a prior pickup, so he ended up not getting him. So he ended up going to JoJo for 11. I don't think Chase Brown is really much to talk about. I don't think he makes a huge difference on your team. He's a good bench guy to have if something happens to Moss, but it seems like he's definitely not the number one anymore in that offense. So it's the opposite of what I hoped for, and I thought,
Yeah.
honestly. DeAndre Hopkins went for $7. I outbid Thrill Kill by $1, who's the only other bid at $6. I feel like that feels like a waste of $7 now, but I'm not super pissed about it. It's only $7.
I think he's still trying to get healthy. So I think it's a great stash for later on. I mean,
Will Levis.
He's gonna be a great depth piece to your team. Like once we get into bye weeks.
Yeah, I don't have any faith in what I've been seeing out of Will Levis, man. That throw today was just too much.
Even the coach yelling at him.
Yeah, even the coach. I mean, you could read the coach's lips. The coach is just running out of the field with his arms out, like, "What the fuck are you doing?" Like, it was just so like I felt the frustration through the TV screen.
Yeah, but at the same time, though, like Calvin Ridley had a day today. I mean, I think he only had maybe like 4 catches, but he ended up scoring like almost 25 fantasy points on the week with a touchdown.
Yeah, he did. They definitely made it a point to showcase him this week and try to help him or use him to help get Levis in the groove. Not to say that it worked, but it helped Ridley. I don't know how much it helped Levis. All the rest of the guys that went other than that, were just for either $0 or $1. So there really wasn't much to talk about on that end of it. And that's pretty much where we're at for this league. And that is our full breakdown on all 3 of these guillotine leagues. So is there anything that you want to talk about, Trevor, specific to what went down in week 1 that maybe is going to be a big thing moving forward for these leagues?
Not really off the top of my head. I mean,
Yeah,
I think the Christian McCaffrey process my elimination. So.
Yeah, I think the McCaffrey injury is definitely going to be something that really does affect the things moving forward in fantasy, because not only with McCaffrey, but we had a good amount of injuries, I feel like, this week too, that leaves some good running backs up in the air right now. What's going to happen?
Oh, a ton. So, I mean, who went down? Cooper Kupp.
Yeah, Kupp went down today. Went down today. Mixon had an ankle sprain, came back, but
that looked bad too.
You never know.
Hip drop tackled him. Like I thought it was going to be a way worse injury, but I guess what they're saying, well, he came back on the field. So
ankles are tough sometimes, though, man. You go home and you go to sleep, you wake up in the morning, and that ankle is swollen as hell. So sometimes that stuff will happen. And you just gotta be careful. But
did Jefferson also get hurt?
Yeah, he got a thigh, like a quad contusion, I believe is what they called it. And that basically, from what he said, he's fine. He says he'll be back, no problem, next week. It's not a big injury. It just was like basically a bruise.
And then we had George Kittle injured, and then T. Higgins missed another game, and Russell Wilson missed the game.
Yeah. I think Russell missed his last game as a starting quarterback, because I believe he is now the backup.
And then we had the Rashad White injury with a groin injury.
Yeah, we'll see how that plays out too. That's one that, I mean, he came back in the game, but I will see if that's something that actually like lingers at all for him. Any kind of a muscle pull on a leg for a running back is scary.
Oh, and we had Evan Ingram.
Yeah, Evan Ingram
hamstring injury in pregame warmups. Oh, back to the T. Higgins thing. Do you think this is like a real injury? Do you think like this is a real hamstring injury, or I don't think a professional
athlete is gonna pull himself out of a game faking an injury like that for a contract dispute. I just can't see that happening. Like if you work that hard to become a pro, you have a competitive streak in you that doesn't allow you to do something like that, in my opinion. Like I just can't see it. So yeah, I could be wrong, but I really don't think that's the case. I think that's just people upset and wanting to try to use a reason that he's not on the field other than the fact that he's just hurt.
Do you know if he was on the sidelines, like he's there at the game?
I'm not sure. I did not see any of that. So I mean, it couldn't be something that he's faking with the team, because then they'd be in a shitload of trouble. So if there's any kind of faking going on, it's probably solely him, and it won't. How do you prove that?
Well, that's the thing with these sit-ins now, like with these contract disputes, you just say that you're injured and they can't really argue with you. You just say, I don't feel good enough to go. and now you're not going to get fined.
I don't know. I just can't see that out of like the situation. I think honestly what happened is he came back, same thing like Ayuk. He came back and tried to ramp up like right away to try to get ready to play after a couple of days of practicing, and he pulled a fucking muscle because he wasn't in shape.
Yeah, but he got the money. I mean, the reason why Jamar Chase is on the field is because he has 2 years to go.
I'm talking about like the situation that the reason he got hurt is because he came back and just tried to ramp up too quick and got hurt, not because of anything else. Like he came back after like 2 days or 3 days before training camp. He stopped his holdout or some shit.
And but we've seen this before. I mean, we've seen players sit out the whole season off of contract disputes. I mean, you got 1 year left. He doesn't. You don't even know if the Bengals are going to pay him. So why are you going to risk getting hurt? And he's already hurt every year.
So what is he going to benefit by being hurt and saying that? So what's his benefit for faking it?
The benefit is, using your leverage against the team to try to get a contract with them.
Why not hold out? Why not just say I'm holding out? Say I'm healthy.
If you say you're holding out, then you get fined.
So it's your money.
Yeah, then you're out millions of dollars. He's still getting paid right now, but I believe he's on the last year of his deal. So why not stay healthy? And you're gonna get moved to another team either way.
I don't know. I just don't see it. I think that's far-fetched, to be honest.
I mean, if he continues to miss weeks and we don't, I don't know.
That sounds like somebody who came up with
conspiracy
theorist. They probably also believe the earth is flat. So, I just don't. I can't see that being the case, to be honest. But
no, I guess we'll find out at some point. But
right, we'll see.
It is a bummer, especially because I traded you Higgins.
Yeah, right. And then I turned around and traded him away.
I know it's killing me too because my starting quarterback was Geno at that point, and he's put up 20 plus each week. I would have been better off just holding fucking Higgins on the bench and starting Geno.
Who has Geno now?
I believe somebody picked him up, but
yeah, that's right. Somebody did pick him up. I believe they picked him up.
Screwed me on the quarterbacks.
I believe they picked him up. I think they picked him up and dropped Will Levis. And I believe they picked him up to back up their other quarterback that they got in the trade that they used to trade away T. Higgins to get, if I remember correctly. So everybody knows I am the one that picked up Geno.
Yeah.
And I also have Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase on my starting roster to stack.
And you're never going to fucking start him. Never going to start Geno. Oh, but cheers, by the way.
Yep, cheers. I don't need to start Geno. He all he's got to do is not start for you against me, and I'm happy.
Yeah, I know. I'm having a rough. I'm 0-2 in that league now.
Yeah, I'm 2-0.
Just killing me. But with all these injuries, who knows? Maybe, get a couple lucky wins and then get into the postseason.
Right. Well, if you need to make a trade at all, I know a guy who's got a pretty deep roster. So,
yeah,
I'll be here. Awesome, man. All right. Well, that was fun, guys. I hope you enjoyed it as much as we did. We're definitely going to be back with doing this every week. It's going to be Monday. We're going to start at 8 p.m. Monday. So it'll be either right after or right around the end of the Monday night game. So basically what's going to happen is we're going to be able to go in and evaluate the teams right as soon as the games are over. We're going to talk about who was eliminated and what we anticipate is coming for the Fab the next week, and then what happened the week prior. So I hope you guys really enjoyed this. I'm looking forward to doing this weekly with you guys. It'll be me and C-Bomb will be here regularly. Unfortunately, Tortoise has to work, so he's not able to be with us on Monday nights very often. So hopefully he'll have an opportunity from time to time to jump in and he can be a guest. But it'll be myself and C-Bomb as your regular hosts for this podcast. So I really hope you guys had a good time with us. We had a great time with you and look forward to seeing you guys soon.